Now I want to make it very clear, I'm not here today to judge. I'm here just to give you the facts of what happened. Now, a general election was scheduled for 1969 towards the end of that year, and indeed it was held in December. But before that election, it was clear that this threat had to be dealt with. These are the events that took place in 1969. I want you to judge for yourself, even without the facts that I've given in my series, Tomboya, it was more than an assassination. I want you to judge for yourselves. In January, Agwins Kodek died in a road accident. Of course, many decades later, during the Kibaki administration, information was released by the government that actually he died from a gunshot wound, which came from a police-issued rifle. On July 5th, 1969, Tom Mboya was assassinated. On October 25th, 1969, that's the day of the Kisumu massacre, the career of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was brought to a screeching halt, the political career, and he was put under house arrest, and other members of his KPU were detained. And therefore, as we went into the elections in December 1969, that threat had been dealt with. Now, what I want us to focus on are the timelines. One thing the timelines did was to make it very difficult for the public to connect those events. My big point here is that deep state operations are not hurried operations. Rarely. The operations which are carefully and intricately planned over a long period of time. That's the first point I want you to take note of. The second very important point about deep state operations is that sometimes they do not even look like they're deep state operations. Many times they're puzzling. The impact may not be felt immediately, but it will be there. An excellent example of this is what happened to the senior Akasha, the drug lord. Now, I've given this story in another video on this channel, but let me just give it briefly. Akasha succeeded for many years in his business of dealing drugs by remaining invisible. Very few people knew that he even existed. Very few people knew that he was the power behind the cartels. And meanwhile, Akasha even financed presidential elections. He was a major financier of the first multi-party elections in 1992, and he financed Kanu for those elections very heavily. And in many ways, Ibrahim Akasha must have felt that he was untouchable. The contacts he had, the people he was dealing with. You even financed a presidential election in 1992 during the draconian days of Kanu rule. You can imagine. But one day Ibrahim Akasha made a mistake. I think he just got too cocky, or the power got to his head. They kidnapped a police officer who was trying to nose around the business. And they kept him in their house and tortured him to teach him a lesson, and then later released him. The deep state decided that was too much, and so they decided to deal with Akasha. And this is how they dealt with Akasha. Akasha was arrested, and his charges were linked to some drug business. And people were shocked, those who knew him. This was an untouchable man. How can they dare arrest Akasha? And they predicted that that case would go nowhere. And they were right. After a very short time, Akasha was released. No evidence. Case over. Case closed. However, this whole court manenos had done something. It had exposed Akasha. It had brought him out into the public. For the first time, people knew that there was somebody called Akasha who was linked to drugs. Yeah, he had been found innocent, but he was linked to drugs in some way. And that was the beginning of the downfall of the Akashas. Take careful note of the fact that the Akashas did not go down on that year when Ibrahim Akasha was arraigned in court. No, it took several years. But that was the beginning of the end. Why? Because they had been exposed. I think you get my point. Yeah, long term, slow, intricately planned. Like chess moves which look unrelated. So let's go back to Eldoret and the Madoadoa remarks. Try and picture what will happen over the next few weeks. What will happen over the next few months? Yeah, because this is just the beginning. It has opened a discussion that, in my opinion, will be impossible for people to forget before the general elections. I don't know what to think, but that's my opinion. And it is the same opinion of many other analysts I've spoken with. The truth is, no matter what way you try and explain Senator Linturi's remarks, it is virtually impossible for Team Tangatanga to shake off that Madoadoa label. A label that will no doubt lose them millions of votes. And I don't think I'm exaggerating. Now, some people have claimed that Senator Linturi is a mole. I have no evidence to prove this yet. However, looking at Senator Linturi's past, there are a few things that stand out. One of them is the fact that this senator from Meru was one of the handful of politicians who went to the president's house. At that time, Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta, they are one of the few leaders who went to his house to convince him to vie for the presidency. What? Oh yes. And that is why some people have been asking for a very long time how it is that Senator Linturi crossed over to the other side to support the deputy president. How did that happen? What did Team Keleweke do to the senator that incensed him so much to cross over to the other side? Yeah, keep that information at the back of your mind and let's move on. Now, this next point is a little sensitive. Yeah, so I have to be careful how I word it. The senator has managed to survive some huge problems that suggest he may have very powerful friends in the country called Kenya. He still has many issues hanging over his head. That is the truth. However, the fact that he has come this far is nothing short of remarkable. In conclusion, if you want to know the impact of Linturi's remarks, you need to remember that another senator, sijui wa senators ni nini, sijui wamekula nini. You need to remember that another senator called Aaron Cheriot at the same Eldoret rally also said some things that some may view as sensitive. But nobody's talking about that. Nobody remembers about that. All they remember about are Linturi's remarks. That should tell you a lot. Bottom line, we cannot rule out a deep state operation in what has befallen Team Tanga Tanga and the presidential bid of Deputy President William Samoei Ruto. Can this crisis that the Ruto presidential bid is facing be fixed? Do we have fixers, political fixers, who are smart enough, good enough to fix it in some way, repair this terrible damage in some way? In my opinion, they're there, but it doesn't matter. It won't help Team Tanga Tanga. Why? Because the character of the deputy president, which is very clear, we all know, has a similarity to the character of Mwai Kibaki. You know, there's some kind of leaders who never listen to advice. If they have advisors, those advisors are mere flower girls. They do not have any impact in their decision making. The third president of Kenya, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki, was like that. William Samoei Ruto is also like that. And many other prominent people in history have been like that. And some of them have been great leaders, granted. However, these kind of leaders are greatly handicapped because many people don't get it. The idea of having advisors you listen to, advisors whom you follow their advice, is not that your advisors will always be right. No, they're human. They will make mistakes, granted. The advantage is that you increase your scope of decision making, which is very important at this high level of national politics. In fact, a good team of advisors for a leader is actually a good team of crisis management experts. In other words, it is not the mistakes they make or the mistakes their candidate makes. Those will happen inevitably. And those are not as important as the ability of this team to solve every crisis that comes across the table. The ability to solve this crisis quickly, efficiently, and effectively. That is what really matters. And it matters terribly. Now, if you have a candidate who has got a reputation of not taking counsel, then they have lost this huge, very huge tool and advantage that any politician in the world needs badly. And that is why I'm saying it doesn't matter whether we have the kind of fixers who can fix this problem or not. It doesn't matter because of the character of the candidate. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.